When you're first starting out in photography, I think most of us would agree that your fellow photographers tell you to reach for that Nifty 50. Now, this is a term I think coined originally by Canon, but Sony, Nikon, and Fuji, they all have an identical version of this lens or something very similar. This advice should not fall on deaf ears because it has a lot of merit to it. Number one, it's a very affordable lens, usually coming in at less than $300. These days, you can probably get it for 200 for in the used market or since it's been out for a while. Number two, it's got a very fast aperture. Usually at 1.8, it lets you dabble with that blurry depth of field and that blurry background that we all come to love. Number three, it's versatile. 50 isn't too telephoto or it's not too tight where you can encompass a lot of the photography that you're probably after. And finally, it's very lightweight and compact. You can throw it in everywhere, and there's really no reason why you shouldn't keep it on your lens 24/7. So again, those are the reasons why a lot of people tell you to reach for that Nifty 50. But what if I told you that lens has a big brother that's been hitting the gym and is on steroids? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. This is the Canon RF 50mm f1.2 L USM. Now, notice I did not throw in the IS in there because it is not stabilized, but this is a monster of a lens, and we're going to be talking about it today. Now, before we dive into that, I sort of want to go on record as having a bone to pick with a lot of fellow YouTubers out there. I know that it's very exciting to get a box and do an ASMR video of how to unbox it and immediately go into reviewing a product. But I don't think that you're doing anybody watching this video any justice because at the end of the day, you kind of want to see what this lens could do, what the body could do, what the light can do. So I know that I'm late to the party, and that's with good reason because I wanted to put together a comprehensive review and a real world test of this lens, which I've actually had for more than a year now. And I feel comfortable enough knowing that I have put it through its paces, I've taken it through the ringer, and I'm finally ready to let you know what I think of this lens, who this lens is for, what it should be used for, and everything else in between. So here's a little backstory before we dive into that good stuff. I was using my trusty EF 85mm 1.4 ISL USM. Now, this was back then the only EF lens that I still had in my bag for weddings, which is what I mostly do. And it just so happens that I was shooting Siobhan's wedding, who came from, I think, Michigan to get married here in Puerto Rico. And I was doing some behind the scenes sort of getting ready shots. And I was as inconspicuous as I could have possibly been at that moment in time during her getting ready portraits. But I felt as though 85 was just a little too tight for what I wanted to accomplish. And so I made the decision right then and there to invest fully into the RF system. And that meant that I needed to get a sort of replacement for my 85. So I end up selling that and I got this bad boy right here. Now you might be wondering, why in the hell did you go from 85 to 50? Well, that's because I wanted something a little bit faster and a little bit more versatile, which to my initial point in this video, 50 is a little bit more versatile when it comes to all around portrait photography, landscape photography, and just overall destination wedding photography, which is specifically what I do for a living. So here's a little fun fact that you should know. Ever since I got this wedding, I've been putting together sort of the Lightroom metadata that basically tells you what kind of, focal length that you've gravitated to unconsciously. And it just so happens that I've been using this lens at my weddings for more than 70% of the time. The other 30% is divvied up between environmental portraits with my 15 to 35, which is recording this video right now, as well as the 100 that I whip out every now and then for both my macro shots, my details when I'm starting the wedding, as well as probably give it to either Brian or Paola for some, videography, which I also offer in my packages. But at the end of the day, 50 1.2 has been apparently my go-to lens, and the numbers speak for themselves. Like, this is inarguable when it comes to figuring out what focal lens I tend to gravitate to the most. So again, going back to what I said earlier in the video, the versatility of the Nifty 50 is completely taken to the next level in terms of the aperture. 1.2 is worlds apart from 1.8. And on paper, it might not seem that way, but having a lens this fast, something I have never had before, admittedly, is otherworldly. You take that blurry background, that bokeh, as they're called, and you take it up a notch. It's unbelievable how much background separation you can get, specifically when it comes to those intimate portraits that I like to shoot. Those environmental portraits obviously look a lot different, and the versatility of the 50 millimeter focal range is otherworldly. There's just no other way to describe it. To that point, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with shooting an entire wedding on this lens, but if 70% of the time I have been, then I'm going to go on a limb that you can actually get away with it. This is an amazing lens for my detail work, which is specifically put on blast when it comes to shooting the venue. Like, I love putting this down at 1.2 and shooting, the table invitations, the actual flowers, the decorations, the chairs, so on and so forth. So I'm going to sprinkle a couple of examples of how I've used this lens periodically through this video so that you can understand sort of what I've been talking about, and you can match it with your eyesight and sort of get a visual feel for what it is that I mean. The bride and groom session for me is magic because I can step back. Obviously, this being a prime, I can't zoom in and out. So I have to manually step back and sort of encapsulate an environmental portrait. And then I can walk in as close as I can possibly need to get for the couple so that I can shoot them with this lens and be a little bit more intimate. I can shoot wide, medium, and tight shots all in this one lens, and I don't feel like I have to grab my other camera with probably a 24 to 70 that I just sold and zoom in and out, because I prefer the look of this lens over any other zoom. Now, it's been widely documented that this lens, being a prime, is a little bit more sharp. It's contrasty. It will get a lot better detail, and primes in general are of higher quality than of zooms. Now, granted, it's not as versatile as a 24 to 70 because you have a couple of lenses within a lens, I should say focal ranges. But when it comes to versatility, I think 50 is definitely going to get the job done. Now, when it comes to the build and quality of this lens, it's unmatched. It's unbeatable. This thing is like, it's robust, it's hefty. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's nothing that you can't, wrap your hands around during a wedding day or, consistent use throughout your photo shoot. But it's definitely not as light as a Nifty 50, I'll tell you that much. You knew this already. This has been out for a while, but I wanted to bring it to your attention in case you will, rely on just using this lens throughout your sessions if they do last for a little bit of time. Most of the time, I do wear a dual harness, which isn't too relevant in my opinion. But nonetheless, I do use this lens quite often for my mini sessions that I like to shoot in Old San Juan. And after an hour, I normally am not complaining in any way, shape, or form. It is beefy, it's robust, it's rather heavy, weighing in at 2 point something pounds if I'm not mistaken. But at the end of the day, nothing to rave home about. Now, my only caveat with this lens is the fact that it's not stabilized, but being a lens this big, I just don't know how you get this to be stabilized and not have it look like the 28 to 70 that's been out for a while as well. That thing is even bigger, heavier, and beefier. And if they were to implement IS in this, and don't get me wrong, I would be all for it. But at the end of the day, I do shoot on a R6 Mark II and already have a couple of stops of stabilization within the actual camera with the IBIS. So I'm not too concerned. This thing is sharp in its own right. And by stopping down to 1.2, you're going to be able to lend in a little bit more light, which means that you can afford to lower the shutter speed a little bit with that integrated IBIS in my camera body. So as much glass as there is inside of this lens, the autofocus is amazing. Canon has always been at the forefront of their dual pixel autofocus, and integrated with the AI inside my R6 Mark II, this can move a ton of glass very quickly. Not once have I had any issues with autofocusing. It barely hunts. It's always sticking the focus right where I need to be. And honestly, I have no complaints when it comes to the autofocus. And moreover, sometimes I give this to Brian or Paola, who happen to be my videographers on my team of destination weddings, and they absolutely love using this lens because it's so fast. It's sticky as crap, and yeah, you can't go wrong with this thing. Now, we've reached the point of this video where you have to start asking yourself whether or not you are worthy of investing into a lens like this, because this isn't for everybody. This is strictly for professionals where you want to take your photography to the next level. So, if you think that by having the Nifty 50 in your possession, you've sort of mastered the look and the versatility and everything that it entails, and you're ready to take your career and your profession to the next level and become an actual professional, then yes, I wholeheartedly recommend. What's not to love about this lens? You're still going to keep that versatility of 50 millimeters all across the aperture range. And at the end of the day, if you want to get a little bit more serious and you have the investment to dish out for a lens of this magnitude, then yes, I wholeheartedly recommend that you do that. If you're more of a hobbyist and enthusiast and you've put your ceiling on yourself where you feel as though having that Nifty 50, regardless of the ecosystem you're on, is good enough for you, and it's probably going to be the best with honor, sir, then I wholeheartedly recommend that you stand pat. Otherwise, yes, if you are willing to enhance your photography, if you're willing to go into the professional realm and ranks of photography, then yes, if you have the money, I would definitely invest in this lens. Now, it has been out for a while, which means the price has probably gone down substantially, but it's still not a cheap lens. It's at least 5 or 6 times as much money as you've invested into the Nifty 50. But at the end of the day, if you're taking your photography to the next level, I think it's very, very doable for you to invest in a lens like this one. That's going to do it for me. I hope you got a little something out of this video. And if you did, hey, stick that thumb, where, if you want to see more videos just like this one. I'd love to have you. Stick around by subscribing. My name is Francis. If you have any other questions about this lens that you want me to tackle, leave them down below and I'll definitely get back to them. See you guys in the next video.